Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Bruno Fearens. I'm working for TMS Software, and I would like to thank Embarcadero for organizing this webinar about the TMS Cloud Pak components. In this webinar, I would like to introduce you to the components in the TMS Cloud Paks, give you an overview of the architecture of the components and the many cloud services already covered by these components. And we'll have a look at three specific demos. One demo about accessing cloud storage services, one to interact with cloud personal information management services, and we'll round up with a demo using the Microsoft Artificial Intelligence Cloud Services. The TMS Cloud Pak is all about components that wrap popular cloud services for you and makes it that easy to access these cloud services. It's available for Delphi and for C++ Builder, and both for VCL Windows application development, but also for FireMonkey cross-platform application development, supporting Windows, macOS, iOS, and Android. And we've even a version that allows you to create applications that access cloud services from Linux and also Raspberry Pi applications. It's a bundle of easy-to-use classes that allow you to interact with cloud services via class methods and class properties. These classes give you an abstraction from the REST APIs, and it saves you from reading through the various specifications of each such REST API that is documented by the cloud service itself. And it also saves you from keeping track of changes of these APIs and updating your application with newer versions of APIs as they come available from cloud services. I would like to cover the architecture of the cloud components in a nutshell. Basically, there is a base class, that from which all our cloud service components descend. And this base class already performs the majority of the work to do all functionality of accessing REST-based cloud services. This includes app registration handling. Each application that accesses a cloud service has a unique application ID and secret, so this is handled by the base class. Also handled is the OAuth 1.0, 1.0a, and the most commonly used now version 2 of OAuth, handled by the base class. As this cloud service access components are all using HTTP communication, there is an HTTP implementation for doing all HTTP operations such as get, put, post, delete. And these HTTP access functions are implemented using operating system API calls. So for each operating system supported, Windows, iOS, macOS, and Android, we use the specific operating system calls there to perform HTTP access. And there is also token persistence, the access token that needs to be obtained to access a cloud service can also easily be persisted. From this base class, implementing all this core functionality, we descend several components, classes, that implement then the specific cloud service functionality. The first part is the application registration. As I explained, for accessing a cloud service, you need to apply for an application key and secret from the cloud service itself by registering your application, and you need to set up this application key and secret with the component accessing the cloud service. And this includes also specifying your scope of access. For example, A service can give you a scope of access to read information from the cloud service, but you can also have services that where you need a specific scope to perform both read and write of data on this cloud service. Connecting to a cloud service basically comes down to the following sequence of steps. First of all, there is a check if an access token is already available, if it was persisted in some file or database or the Windows registry, for example. And that access token, that is the key to being able to access the cloud service, needs to be tested first. If the access token is available, then we can proceed to test if the access token is still valid, as for some cloud services, access token has a limited access time that it's available or working. So if the access token that we had persistent is still working, we can proceed to connect and use the cloud service. If this is not the case, if there is no access token, we need to perform a new authentication and authorization. So we need to offer the user the possibility to enter his credentials and to authorize the application to access the cloud service, to access his account, his data on the cloud service. So at component level, there is a simple connect method. And when the connection is successful, either by an already available access token that was tested or by a new authentication and authorization, after this is done or handled, the unconnected event of this component is called. This is an overview of the cloud services that we currently cover in the TMS Cloud Pak components. As you can see, there are many services offered by Google, like the Google Drive, Google Mail, Google Contacts and Google Calendar, which are part of the Google Personal Information Management services. Also quite some services from the Microsoft Cloud, which includes Microsoft OneDrive and also the Microsoft PIM services, Live Calendar and Live Contacts. And there are many others like YouTube, for example, a lot of social media cloud services, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Foursquare, cloud storage services such as Box, Amazon Cloud Drive, High Drive, and some, let's say, miscellaneous cloud services such as sending SMS messages or getting weather information, doing payments with PayPal, etc. So first of all, we will be having a look at using cloud storage services. This is a series of cloud storage services that we currently support: Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, Cubic, High Drive, and Amazon Cloud Drive. We've introduced on top of the base class that is doing the cloud access, and a class specifically for cloud storage access, which is the T-Cloud Storage class. And this abstract class implements the usual functions that we need to access a cloud storage service, being upload, download, delete a file, create a folder, search for a file, and get the full cloud drive information. And so for each cloud storage service, we have a class descending from this abstract class T-Cloud Storage, and this implements the specifics for Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, etc. So in this first demo, I'll be demonstrating how we can access both Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive in an abstract way. So we develop the application to access the cloud storage service, and then we can connect to, for example, Google Drive. And with virtually no changes in the code, we can convert this application to use the Microsoft OneDrive. So let's switch to Delphi now and have a look at this demo. So here we are in Delphi, and I have already prepared the basics to win some time for the demo application that will access the cloud storage services, in this case Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive. I've dropped the ADB G Drive component, which is part of the TMS Cloud Pack, on the form, which is the non-visual component through which we will access the Google Cloud Storage Service. And then I have here prepared some code that probably does what you learned first when you started up Delphi 1 22 years ago. The typical example where you have an edit control, a button control, and a list box control, and adds items to the list box that were added or set in the edit control. For accessing the Google Cloud Storage, the ADV G Drive component is used, and it is in the form create that we will initialize this component. Notice here that I do the initialization by accessing the CS instance, and this instance is declared in the form and is of the type T-Cloud Storage. This is the abstract class that is the base class for all cloud storage components. So I have this instance and I assign it to my Google Drive Access component. And the first thing that I do is initialize the application key and secret of this class. This application key and secret is stored in comes from an ini file, and I can't share this key and secret with you, as keys and secrets are always considered private and cannot be shared with other people. The next step that I do here is configuring the location where my access token will be persisted. So keep in mind that when I will access a cloud service with my application key and secret on a successful authentication and authorization, I will obtain an access token. And so I will persist this access token here in an ini file for reasons of simplicity. And that means that if I have this access token, when I start the application again and I load this access token from this ini file, I can reuse my cloud service without doing a new authentication and authorization. I assign the onConnected event from my cloud storage service, and when this is done, the whole process starts by calling the connect method. So remember that the connect method will first of all check if there is an access token. If so, it will test if the access token is valid, and if it's valid, it will trigger the onConnected event. If there is no access token or it's no longer valid, this connect method will perform a new authentication and authorization for using the cloud storage service. What happens in the onConnected event? The implementation is here. We perform the load settings call. Let me first of all show you the cloud storage here, in this case the Google Drive. So what I've done is create a folder, app settings, on my Google Drive, and as you can see, this folder is currently empty. And so what I will do from the load settings method is, first of all, I will search to get access or to find the item that represents the app settings folder on my Google Drive. So I perform the cloud storage service dot search list, the method to find, in this case, the folder app settings. And this here is a collection of search results. So if there are results, the next step that I'm doing is searching for a specific file within this folder that I've found. And if I find a file here, what I do is I download this file here to a local file, cloudsettings.ini, And then I will simply load the items from this ini file in my list box. Let's start this application and have a look at what is happening. So in the form create event, remember that I have done finally the call to connect. And so as there is no access token, I need to perform a new authentication and authorization. So this here is the authorization screen from Google Drive. And so here I need to authorize my application to access my Google Drive. And of course I say allow. And when it was allowed, I have now my application running with access to my Google Drive. What I do now here is add some information in this list box. And let's add some cities that will probably say something to you. And I add these 3 cities. And now I close my application. And we have a look at what is happening when my application closes, and therefore we are going to have a look at the event on the form close query. And here we call save settings. Let's have a look at the save settings implementation. Here you can see that I'm again searching for the folder app settings on my cloud storage service. When I find this folder, I will save the contents of my list box in an ini file, and I will upload these settings in my ini file to the cloud storage service. So if I have a look now at Google Drive and I perform a refresh on this folder, you can see that a file was created, the settings.ini file that I've actually just uploaded. If I will now restart this application, notice that I have not gone through a new authentication authorization step, but that I have immediately been able to start my application. And as you can see, it has come up with the settings that I had persisted before in the settings.ini file that was on the cloud storage service. So this time it did successfully go through finding the app settings folder and then also finding the settings.ini file, downloading it to cloud settings.ini to have no confusion with the settings.ini file that is created when I close the application, and finally it loads these items from my list box in from the cloud settings.ini file that I retrieved from the cloud service. So what I will do now is introduce the Microsoft OneDrive. So I have this non-visual component ADV OneDrive. I've also here a view on my OneDrive folder app settings. I've created the same folder on OneDrive, and as you can see, this folder is still empty. So what I will do now is actually set up my OneDrive component from the form create, and I need to set it up with my application key and secret specific for OneDrive. And this key and secret is also stored inside this small include file. So I just switch these components, and that should be sufficient to get the same application working, but instead of using Google Drive, using OneDrive. So let's see this in action. I start up this application, and of course the first thing that will happen is the authentication and authorization for OneDrive, as I had not authenticated and authorized before. Here you can see that it requests access to files on my OneDrive account, and I agree with this. I say yes, And then this closes and starts up with an empty list, which is expected as my app settings folder is still empty. So let's add some data in this list, and let's add some other data to make sure that it's different information on this different cloud storage service. And so we add some car brands in this list for this new test with OneDrive. Like this, we'll add 5 brands. And when we close this application now, it will perform the persistence of these settings onto my onto my Microsoft OneDrive in this case. And as you can see, it already showed this settings.ini file that appeared automatically here in OneDrive. You can see when this application now starts, it comes up with the information that I had persisted in the Microsoft OneDrive Cloud Storage Service. And this rounds up this first demo on using cloud storage services. And that brings us to the second part of the webinar, covering access to cloud personal information management services. Here in particular, the Microsoft Calendar and Microsoft Contacts, the Google Calendar, Contacts, and Google Tasks. For the demo, we will be using the Google Calendar, and it's actually almost identical or similar to access the Google or the Microsoft Calendar or Microsoft Contacts, but we will focus in this demo on Google Calendar, and we will be using the non-visual cloud service access component, the ADVG Calendar, for a VCL Windows application. If you would be using a FireMonkey cross-platform application, you would be using the non-visual component TMS FMX G Calendar. And this non-visual component offers access to the different calendars that you can configure in Google Calendar. And it exposes this via methods where you can add, delete, and update calendars or retrieve all calendars that are associated with your account. And to manipulate the specific events within a calendar, we have the TG Calendar item class and a collection of such items where you can add, update, and delete items on this class. Things will become clear when we have a look at the demo. And so we switch to Delphi, where I have prepared another application. And here we have the ADVG Calendar component. If we look in the configuration, it's very similar. We also set up here the application key and secret and the location where to persist the tokens, the access token of my G calendar. And so when I press the connect button, I perform the connect method of my ADVG Calendar component. And everything starts in the onConnected event of my calendar component. And here I will retrieve all the calendars from my Google Calendar, and I will add these calendars to a combo box. If we have a look at how this is added to the combo box, you can see that I'm performing an add object with, first of all, the name of the calendar, and in a second parameter, I add the object for the calendar itself. And when I have then selected an item from this combo box, I will use this code to retrieve all events that will happen on this specific day on my Google Calendar. So how am I doing this? I'm retrieving the selected calendar from my combo box, and I clear first of all everything in my list box that will hold or display all events set up for today. First thing that I do is get the unique ID for the specific calendar that I have selected in my combo box. So I access the object that I had associated with the selected item in my combo box, and the ID is the unique ID of that calendar. And then I retrieve all events within that calendar, so by using the selected calendar ID, between now, 0 hour, and 0 hour for tomorrow. So by doing this, I have effectively all calendar items from today. And all these calendar items are available or accessible via the advgcalendar.items collection. And so I simply loop through this collection and display the summary of these calendar items, and also the start and the end time of these calendar items, as you can see here. Then I will also have some code to add an event to my calendar programmatically. So here I have my group box where I can add some summary information, a start time and an end time, and some notes or a description for my item that I will add to my calendar. If I have a look at that code, what do? I create a calendar item in my items collection. I set the properties of this item, being the summary, start time, end time, and the description of my item. Very important here is that I set the calendar ID, the unique ID for the calendar in which I want to store this calendar item. And finally, I add this calendar item to my calendar. Let's have a look at the Google Calendar itself. So here I have a web view on my Google Calendar. And as you can see, for today, for my personal calendar, this calendar is empty. And so now let's start our application. And let's try to connect to the Google Calendar. And as you can see, the first thing that happens is my authentication and authorization screen. I have to authorize this application to have offline access to my Google Calendar, which I will allow. And by doing this, you can see that the combo box is already filled with the calendars that I have available. So this is this list of calendars that is now here visible in the drop-down. If I select my personal calendar and get today, I retrieve no events, as there is simply nothing in my calendar for today. I will add here some events. Let's say that in the afternoon I'm doing some Delphi programming. I create this event, and if I retrieve now the events from today, you can see that I get my Delphi programming event in this list. I can add some more events, like a lunchtime at 12 o'clock. If I create it and update, you can see that I retrieve lunch and my Delphi programming session in the afternoon. Now we will do the reverse and add something from my application itself. And let's add the dinner time, which, let's say, starts at 7 o'clock in the evening. We set it to 7 o'clock, and let's take an hour for dinner, and dinner with wife and kids. And I add this to my Google Calendar. If I now do get today, you can see that the dinner event was added, and you can also see that without doing anything, this dinner event also showed up in my Google Calendar. So with this small demo, you can see how little code is effectively needed to have programmatic interaction with your Google Calendar, and pretty much the same for doing so with your Microsoft Live Calendar. And this brings us to the last part of this webinar, a part covering using artificial intelligence cloud services, in this case the Microsoft Cognitive Services that we will use for both image recognition and speech synthesis. For the image recognition part, this is done by sending pictures to the cloud service, and in return we will get, for the part that does image analysis, a textual description of what the cloud service sees, what's on the picture, and a series of tags for what it finds in the image that was submitted. Or we will also demonstrate the OCR functionality of this Microsoft service. And we will be using the Bing Speech Synthesis API to speak out the textual information that is returned from the image recognition service. Let's switch to Delphi, and here we have created a FireMonkey application because we will be deploying this on a mobile device to use the camera on this mobile device to take the pictures that we will have analyzed. Here we can switch between an analysis or an OCR function, and everything is started from the capture button, the button from where we launch the camera service from the mobile device. And when the photo was taken with this camera, the do did finish method is triggered, and here this method will save the picture that was taken with the camera to a file, and then we will submit this file with this non-visual component for the Microsoft Artificial Intelligence Service that will submit it with the process file method and with the parameter to do either an image analysis or an OCR functionality. When this result is retrieved, we put this result in the memo, and then we will launch the Bing Speech API component, the non-visual component that will actually submit the text to the service and will then play the sound file that is returned from the service. So here you can see the call to the Bing Speech API component. So we send the text to this cloud service, and in return we retrieve a memory stream that contains the audio, and we play the audio via this play sound call on the Bing Speech API component. We've prepared a video where you can see everything live in action. So you can see the actual camera live taking images, sending these to the services, and watch the results retrieved from the Microsoft Cognitive Services. So here we have the mobile application deployed on iPad, and the first step is going to discover the AI services from Microsoft to detect objects, image analysis, and we're going to see if it can recognize an apple. So we start by scanning or taking a picture of the apple. Picture is taken and we use that picture, and now this is submitted to the Microsoft service.
A red apple.
And as you can see, it has detected this is really a red apple and has used the Bing Speech API to tell in words what object it has seen. The next step, we are going to test the OCR capabilities of the Microsoft AI service. And here we have a book a well-known book that we are going to capture and see if Microsoft can recognize the text on the cover of this book.
Rapid. Development. Steve McConnell. Taming. Wild. Software. Schedules.
And as you can see, it has pretty well detected and OCR'd the text on the cover of this book. And with this, we are at the end of this webinar. I just wanted to share with you some interesting pages on our website, the VCL Cloud Pack page, from where you can download a fully functional trial version of these cloud components. So all services shown here on this list are included and covered by the TMS VCL Cloud Pack. If you're interested in doing the same but for cross-platform and mobile application, you can find it here on the TMS FMX Cloud Pack page. And there is one more interesting page that I want to share with you, and this is the page cloudkey.asp. And on this page we have information for each service where you can register for an application key and secret that you will need to access these cloud services. So for each of these services, you can look up what to do to register for an application key and secret. For example, for the Box cloud storage service, you can see here links and a step-by-step description how you register for the application key and secret that is shown here. And the same for Dropbox, etc., etc. All services are covered on this page, and this is something helpful to get started with registering and get started with accessing these cloud services through our components. And this brings us to the Q&A session of our part of this webinar. So let me know if you have any specific questions, and I will be glad to help you.